for joining us today. I'm going to introduce our guest. We have here my daughter Carlene Daly, who's with us today. And Carlene, you want to tell a little bit about yourself? I don't put on the spot.
Well, thank you so much, Mom, for introducing me. A little bit about myself. I'm very inspired by what my mother is trying to do here on this radio station. Currently, I am a property manager and really just trying to fulfill God's word as well and just learn more in that due diligence aspect. And Mom, would you like to tell a little bit about yourself?
She tried to put me back on the spot too. Okay. Well, my name is Darlene Lee, and I've had this mission idea to actually do a family talk show with family and friends, just having real conversations for the last 3 years. But I've been contemplating not to do it for all kinds of reasons. Sometimes we feel like we're not good enough or worthy enough, but the Lord just laid it on my heart. And it didn't matter if I was good enough or worthy enough. What matters is whose kingdom am I building? His kingdom or Satan's kingdom? So I decided to walk out on faith, and we're going to get this faith, family, and friends going, where we're going to have real conversations like we would do in our everyday home. If we were all together as family, we just have the same conversations we would have at our kitchen table. So please join us and continue to participate also with this faith, family, and friends talk show. Okay? So we're going to get started first by just going over some news articles that we have found that a lot of people have been talking about lately, and how a lot of these news articles can relate back to the Bible. And we're going to start first with my daughter Carlene. She's going to tell some news that she has.
So we do have this news article that says China AG minister says winter wheat conditions could be worst in history. Not long ago, we went to Grassroots to do a survey, and many farming experts and technicians told us that crop conditions this year could be the worst in history, he said. This year's grain production indeed faces huge difficulties.
Well, thank you for that article, Miss Carlene. Now I'm going to read another article. The United States winter wheat rating worst ever in November. This is another article came out from www.worldgrain.com. They also talked about the United States winter ratings worse than ever. So if you look at the news article for China and the United States winter wheat, which serves a lot of the United States as well as the world wheat. So this is really dealing with our food issues of what's going on today as well. So then we had another news article lately that just happened. We had Queen Elizabeth II, the UK longest serving monarch, has died at the age of 96 after reigning for 70 years. So she died last Thursday. So this is big news for England as well. People don't realize it has a lot to do with the United States as well. If people study history, Rome and England and the United States, all these countries, China, all this plays a big part in the Bible. But most times we don't talk about it a lot anymore. You know, back in my day when I was a little girl, in church all we heard about was Revelation, the end times. And, you know, I never thought I would actually be living in the time where I would see this. I always thought, well, you know, you heard all this, it's never going to happen in my time.
Yeah.
You know, in the last few years, I've been like, wow, I'm really seeing the Bible being fulfilled right in front of my eyes.
Yeah. That's crazy that you mentioned that, because I was just having a conversation earlier this morning, and I had asked Grandma that did she think she would ever be living in the time that we are now. And like a lot of times going to church and things like that, you would hear the older generation say, you know, well, we've heard about the end of times forever since we've been growing up. But if you really look at what's going on in the world right now, it really looks like the Bible is revealing itself day after day.
That's right. That's right. And that's what breaks my heart a lot of times, is because a lot of our younger generations who haven't been taught the Bible, and I still don't know the Bible as good as I would like to know it. That means I just need to study more. You know, there are many who know the Bible way more and way better than I do. But I do remember studying some and remembering the words from the past. Even what the old folks used to say. The old people back in the day would tell us things that were coming. And we never thought we would see it, but now we are seeing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one big issue that's really been talked about a lot is this thing all over YouTube. And this is what it's going to be about, our focus on today. A lot of conversation been talking about, Beyonce. You know, they've been all on the news talking about her riding the different horses. Especially our young people. You know, you all really look up to the entertainment industry. And this is why I always like to talk to y'all young folks about focusing on everything that you see with the entertainment industry. Because, believe it or not, even though God confused the language through Babel, it's amazing how Satan still used Babel to communicate with symbols and images to still talk with everyone.
Yeah.
So when I saw these pictures on YouTube of the 4 horses, and it was such a big issue, and we'll just reread some of the information we found on that, because on there they had, let's see here, Newsweek. Okay, they had it here on Newsweek. It was let me make sure I want to tell you the article so you can go back. We want you to actually go back and look up this information. Don't just go by what we say. I always say go do your own research. Don't go by what somebody else tell you. Go do your own research and see if they're really telling you the truth. And that's what you should always do. Even when you're in church, when they give you a scripture, you go write it down and go back and read it and study it for yourself. You know, but they was talking about that on Newsweek, and it's the Sunday, September the 11th, 2022 article. And it was talking about the different images of, Beyonce on the different horses. And fair use of what we're saying. You know, the article was showing different images of her on different horses. And it said on Twitter that the Renaissance imagery of Beyonce was referring to the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Okay? And here's why they were saying. They were saying July the 20th, Beyonce sat on top of a white horse in the Black is King movie. And in August of 2022, she posed with a black horse for Harper's Bazaar. Then while last week it said that she had graced the covers of British Vogue on a red horse. Then finally, the holographic horse on the Renaissance cover was unveiled last week, it's saying. So a lot of people have been really talking about this all over YouTube videos. And if you don't believe me, you go to YouTube, you can Google all this stuff, what we're talking about, fair use. It's on there. Regardless of the horse imagery is striking in different colors, horses would represent the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, which represents different things that they tell us what's going to happen for the future times at end times. So we're going to sort of discuss that today, talking about the 4 horsemen is what we're going to really get into talking about. And one of her songs, was it called the Renaissance? That was actually a cover with the holographic horse. And a lot of people say the holographic horse is the pale horse. So that's what the Renaissance. So I looked at that word Renaissance. Let's see what Renaissance means. I'm going to let her read some of this to help me along.
So it says that Renaissance, the activity, spirit, or time of the great rival art, literature, and learning in Europe, beginning in the 14th century and extending to the 17th century, marking the transition from the medieval to the modern world.
Okay. So then I also looked it up in dictionary.com. And dictionary.com says a rebirth or revival. Just like she just read. It was a revival of classical art, architecture, literature, and learning that originated in Italy in the 14th century and later spread throughout Europe. So It amazes me with two words they always kept saying: rebirth and revival. So what are we hearing? Everybody from our leaders talking about rebirth of the nation, or rebirth. So when I heard that word, rebirth, that's weird that Renaissance would be the name of a cover, which means everything our leaders been saying, rebirth. So, and revival. But then I looked at another word, it said also awakening. So when I saw awakening, okay, it said the act of awakening from sleep. So who's sleep? That's my question. Who's sleep?
All of us.
That's what it seems like, all of us.
Yeah.
Who's sleep? So, and then it made me think, and I started praying about it. I said, an act of awakening from sleep. So, during that time, and I started looking in, my daughter was asking me about the medieval period. And this is something, because I do love history. And I always wondered, why did they take out civics and Western civilization in high school? When I was in high school in the 80s, that was a class you actually took. But when you all came along, that class, they no longer taught it. But if you study Western civilization and civics, a lot of that ties back into our history. The medieval time, the dark ages, all that also ties into the Bible.
Yeah.
And that's why I say the Bible sometimes is the better history book, because believe it or not, it's still talking about all those ages and those times. So for everyone to keep saying a rebirth, what are we rebirthing? And what are we having a revival of? And that's something we want to talk about later on, that we're going to have more discussions, and from now on we'll have more guests and we'll talk about different topics. Okay? So now we're going to go into the Four Horsemen, because that's what our real topic is about today, the Four Horsemen. So let's see what they're talking about, and what does the Bible say about the Four Horsemen. So Carlene, you're going to read a verse and I'll read a verse, okay? And you can start. We're going to read Revelation 6, starting with verse 1. Now she's going to read the international version. Is that the one you have here?
Yes.
International version. But I always like to follow it with King James version and compare the two. What do both say? Because to me, the King James version is the more realer version to look at. So I sometimes look at the international version just to break it down and simplify it a little bit more. But the King James version, to me, should be the one you should always follow.
And
that's my opinion.
I love that how the Bible really reverts back to what Beyonce's pictures were of every single horse, the color, down to the color. It really reflects back into the word.
Right.
And it's like, obviously she can't tell us exactly, but she does it through symbolism. So here we are.
And maybe she doesn't know she's doing it. I don't know. But I just know by looking at the pictures. When I looked at the pictures, I was like, if people don't wake up, good grief, how much plainer can they make it before us what's really happening in the world back to this book, the Bible?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we are in Revelations 6 chapter, verse 1 through 8, and I'm going to go ahead and start reading. I watched as the Lamb opened the first of the 7 seals. Then I heard one of the 4 living creatures say in a voice like thunder, "Come." I looked, and there before me was a white horse. Its rider held a bow, and he was given a crown, and he rode out as a conqueror bent on conquest.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the horses that she rode on was white. Next verse. When the Lamb opened the 2nd seal, I heard the 2nd living creature say, "Come." Then another horse came out, a fiery red one. Its rider was given power to take peace from the earth and to make people kill each other. To him was given a large sword.
Wow.
When the Lamb opened the 3rd seal, I heard the 3rd living creature say, "Come." I looked, and there before me was a black horse. Its rider was holding a pair of scales in his hand. Then I heard what sounded like a voice among the 4 living creatures saying 2 pounds of wheat for a day's wages, and 6 pounds of barley for a day's wages, and do not damage the oil and the wine. When the Lamb opened the 4th seal, I heard the voice of the 4th living creature say, "Come." I looked, and there before me was a pale horse. Its rider was named Death, and Hades was following close behind him. They were given power over 1/4 of the earth to kill by sword, famine, and plague, and the wild beasts of the earth.
Wow. And that's that's chapter 6, Revelation chapter 6, verses 1 through 8 that she read so far, referring back to the horses. But now that you say that I think that brings me back to Matthew 24 that I have been reading too. Because in my opinion, yes, Revelation is good too, but if you go read Matthew 24, it's telling you also everything that's really going on today, you know? When it tells you about the famine, and we just read articles about the wheat, and a lot of people have already noticed about the grocery stores going in there, and a lot of the shelves are bare, you know? So where are we going? I mean, what is it leading to? You know, even your own president, they've been saying something about famine to put away some food. So my question is, have you put away anything? Are we putting away anything, you know, for disasters and when things happen, you know?
Yeah.
But some people say, well, we shouldn't prepare, you know, just don't worry about it. And I'm like, and I may be wrong, you know, please correct me if you feel I'm wrong, but that's okay. This is my opinion, you have yours. But, you know, even Joseph prepared for the famine that was coming. Had he not prepared, there would have been food to feed his people, you know, and to feed many people, because he prepared for the 7 years of famine that came.
Yeah.
So if they prepared for the 7 years of famine that came, do you not think we should prepare for something that's coming?
Well, I think to back on with that, I know this one is a little bit different, but it's kind of just like Noah. He's crazy. He's building this thing. There's no rain. And he was still doing what God told him to do, regardless of what everybody else was saying. I think that comes in play today. A lot of people goes under peer pressure, and they stop what they hear the voice of God actually telling them to do.
So true.
And they start listening to what family, friends, or outsiders who don't even know what to do. And you know, I just think that it goes back to just doing what you really, really hear God telling you to do, which is prepare. So. And
that's so true, Carlene. And right now we're living in a time now that you have to listen to the Lord's voice more so than anybody else. I'm serious. In this day and time, you got to pray for discerning spirit, for guidance and wisdom, because it's amazing how Satan works. He works through first manipulation, next intimidation, and then if you don't comply with those, then the next is domination.
Yeah.
So you think about it. We got to also know our enemy, study our enemy a little bit too. That's how he works, through trickery. You know, look how he tricked Eve.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So he used trickery first, manipulation. Then if you can't do it that way, intimidate you, make you feel bad, peer pressure, all that. You're going to do what I say. And then the third, domination. If you don't do what I say, okay, it's like the king back in the day said with the 3 guys in the fire furnace. You either do this, worship me, bow down and do this, or this is what's going to happen, death. So then that's domination. So we got to ask ourselves in these last days, because believe it or not, I never thought I would be living in this time to actually see what the preachers back in my day used to teach when I was a little girl, because I got to the point I was like, oh man, this will never happen in my time. And I'm pretty sure many others feel the same way, that it would never happen in their time. But the news now is right in front of your face. Wake up. You already live in Revelations. We're already there. We're already there. And I don't think a lot of us see it. Well, the Lord tells us sometimes we will be blinded until you ask for your eyes to be open to see the truth.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. I think just by experience, I know in my life, I was raised in the church, brought up in the church. And when I got into the world, I realized, like, you know, a lot of scriptures that we read, it wasn't really what preparing you for the world, I would say. There's a lot of scriptures now that I've heard that I've never been taught before, that I've never heard before. And I really think a lot of us, our eyes are closed. Even though we're in the church, our body is in the church, but our eyes are still very closed.
Well, that's because it's like the word tells us, Lord said, we say we love him, but yet our hearts are far from him. So that's why we have to be willing to open our hearts for guidance and for wisdom, but from him, and then he will lead us where we need to go. And a lot of times, see, our job as a parent, we're just supposed to train you, raise you up in the way you're supposed to go. And when you get old, you're going to do what you want to do in life. Yeah. But all we can do is pray for you, because then the Bible says you train them up in the right way. Mm-hmm. And then they will come back sooner or later.
Yeah, absolutely.
To the word, because even when I was young, I was in the church a lot and I learned a lot. But then when you get out here in this real world, life hits you. And when life hits you, you be like, oh Lord.
Yeah. But
I found out through life, remember those scriptures. Those scriptures do come back, and they actually give you a little peace of mind to endure, because that's what it's all about. The battle's not given to the strong, the ones the battle is going to be won by those who can endure what's coming, to endure. Mm-hmm. And that's the key, to be able to endure what's coming in life. My husband always loved Rocky Balboa, and y'all knew growing up. And Rocky Balboa always used to say, it's not about how many times you get knocked down, but it's about how many times can you get up and keep going. Yeah, so that's what life is all about. How many times can you keep getting knocked down, but you keep getting back up and you keep going. And a lot of times, that's why I say faith, family, and friends, because really, to deal with what's coming, you're going to have faith. Mm-hmm. Faith is going to be the only thing that's going to get us through. And the Word of God. People don't realize, it's like I heard this guy, and you all can look him up. His name is Stephen Darby. When they turned me on to this guy, Stephen Darby, and my daughter turned me on to him. Stephen Darby Ministries, man.
He's rough. He's rough around the edges, but I think that's what we need in this day and time, because we have so many watered down messages, and that's why people around my age, we need something that's going to stick with us, that resonate with us, not watered down messages. And Stephen Darby is a person, it'll pierce you. It'll pierce you. Now,
like this man is dead and gone, but his messages on YouTube still lives on. And you be like, it makes you go and do your own research, because you can't believe some of the, a lot of the history I knew, but for people to revert back to the Bible, the history, and that's what people don't realize, how much the history reverts back to this book, the Bible. And because they try to separate, you're not going to separate history from the Bible, because the Bible is nothing but history. Yeah. Just like you're not going to separate politics from the Bible, because the Bible is all about politics. Yeah. It's all about all this. So when we look at even our leaders and what's going on in the world today, how's it reverting back to the Bible? What does God say about it? When we go back to the Bible, it gives us the answers. We may not like the answers, but it's giving us the answers. And I always try to, when y'all call me, and sometimes I'm just amazed how now you all at the age that sometimes you all encourage me when I'm down. And I can call you all and be like, oh, I had a rough day. I never met people in my life like these people that sit around and talk about everybody all day and can't find nothing better to do. And you all uplift me, and you all reverted back to scripture. Yeah. And I'll be like, thank you, Lord, that they reverted back to the word to pick me up when I needed to pick up. And you all grown now. Yeah. But, even because we're older and parents, we need pickups too.
But it goes back to when you just mentioned train up a child in the way that they should go. And, I have to give you honor when honor is due. I have wonderful parents who have really raised their children
thank you,
greatly, but with that, in a sense, revert back to the Bible, I know from my own experiences, when I would open up the Bible, I just felt at first in my very younger ages, it was boring at first. I would fall asleep, and then later on,
that's the trick of the enemy.
Yeah, absolutely. But then later on, when life happens and things like that, and you desperately need God in your life, the Bible is really always there. It's always literally just a reach away, and God always just makes sure that He still talks to you. He's still there, but sometimes we can't hear Him because we're so divulged into our own world, our own life, what we want to do. And when life happens, I feel like that's God's way of saying, are you ready to turn back to me? Are you ready to do what I was originally creating you to do in the earth?
Well, and that's the way we're going now. The world is getting so far away from the Lord that the Lord is saying, okay, you won't feel like you don't need me. I'll just let you all sit back. I'll just watch you. You know, but you're going to get tired of all this chaos from Satan and all these evil things he's bringing your way, because you'll get back on your knees and start praying.
Yeah.
When you see this world is going through what Revelation is, and we're just in the beginning stages. Trust me, people. When the Bible tells us it's going to be like birth pains of a pregnant woman, we're just in the first stages of the 9 months. If you're reading what's going on now, we're just in the first stages, the first trimester. So this is just the beginning of what's to come. You know, I was telling my brother that I said, we're not preparing our children for what's really coming, because the Bible said what's coming. It's going to be horrific and things that's going to be you could never imagine that's ever happened before in history. So for that time to come, it's going to be something. And, you know, we got to prepare our hearts and our minds. You know, they've already started with our children, you know, what they're teaching our children now. These are different topics we'll get into. But our main topic today was about the Four Horsemen, and we want to study more about the Four Horsemen, you know, about what's coming and what is already happening. Because when Satan starts going after the children, get ready, because next is going to be sudden destruction. Because, you know, and history repeats itself. History repeats itself.
Yeah. So
as old folks used to say, there's nothing new under the sun. I never knew they got that from the Bible, people, until I started studying for myself. And I'm like, dang, that's actually in the Bible.
Wow.
It's nothing new under the sun. I believe it's in Proverbs.
And that's a saying you hear growing up all the time.
Nothing new under the sun. But they got that quote from the Bible. Because the Bible tells you there's nothing new under the sun. History repeats itself.
It does.
You know?
Yeah.
Now, I tell you what we're going to do. If you would like to join in with the conversation to give us some suggestions or ideas about what we're talking about. Let me look up. Please message me, because we will have future shows every third and fourth Monday of the month. And we'll talk about different conversations. So, you know, some of y'all might have different thoughts or ideas of what you like to talk about. If that's the case, please let me know what subjects you would like to talk about. And, you know, as a family and friends, because that's what we're called, faith, family, and friends. And that's what we're going to be having conversations about. Faith, family, and friends topics. Having real conversations like we normally would do at home. You know, real conversations about these prophetic times that we're living in. Now, I'm going to give you my phone number here. Or you can call the radio station. And if Lamont doesn't mind. Let's see here. So I'm supposed to put that phone number down. Just 1 second. All right. You can call me at 434-214-0330 or send me a text message, and we can use that text message just to follow back up with you if you have different topics you would like to talk about, dealing with family issues, dealing with faith, you know, and friends, conversations that we can have. Now, one last thing, we were supposed to have a guest today, Sister Diane Cruz. And Sister Cruz couldn't be here because she had to be out of town. And I had to laugh this morning when I was looking over my notes and studying about her topic of her play. She has a play coming out, and it's called The Four Freshmen.
Wow.
I had to laugh at that, the Four Freshmen, and I said, wow, Lord, you worked that one out. The Four Horsemen. Now we talk about the Four Freshmen. And this is a play that she wrote, which will be, you know, Sister Diane Cruz. She has written various types of plays for 35 years.
Wow, that's a long time.
It's a long time. And she loves writing historical plays. Now this play she wrote called the Four Freshmen. I'm sorry, my mind's still on the Four Horsemen. The Four Freshmen is a one-act play that you remember about history. She had written this play before, and it was actually played in Northern Virginia for a high school Black history play. So she decided to bring it here to our area, and it's going to be at the TJM Community Center, located on 1011 Hill Matthew Highway 501 South in South Boston, Virginia. The play is going to be September the 23rd, the 24th, and the 25th, 2022. Friday is going to be at 6 p.m. Saturday and Sunday is going to be at 4:30 p.m. And again, it's going to be at the TJM Community Center on those days, the 23rd, the 24th, and the 25th. So I asked Miss Diane what made her to decide to, she's really doing this as a fundraiser to help the TJM Community Center, and she said the L.E. Coleman and the African American Museum Scholarship Fund.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. So I was asking her what made her decide to contribute to these two organizations. And she replied, these are organizations she's been a part of for a while, and she just wanted to do something to bring back funds that can help the community. So that's why she decided to do the play. But she was telling me about the setting of the Four Freshmen. The setting of the Four Freshmen is during the winter of the 1960 in Greensboro, North Carolina. It was a time in our nation's history when the Jim Crow laws were strictly enforced. So, a lot of people be like, oh, just don't worry about that history anymore. Slavery's over with, just let's forget about it. Forget about it, that's part of history. When you forget history, you repeat history.
Yeah. So
So that's why you never forget your history, because if you don't, we'll be going back into slavery. If we don't look out, we may be already heading there. So he says there are three central themes that identify the struggles within the play. She said the first, now I thought this was interesting when I saw this. She said the first struggle was man versus himself.
Ooh, that's deep.
That's deep, isn't it? Man versus himself. We all versus ourselves.
Yeah,
that's a
absolutely.
struggle. Each and every one. Anybody say they don't have it? I don't believe what you're saying, because we all, most of the time our biggest battle is battling ourselves.
Yeah.
And then the next battle, she said, was man versus society. I was like, wow, man versus society. Because we do battle society. Their thoughts, the images, the way they want us to live life, different things like that. And then the last one she said was man versus man.
Wow.
We versus against each other.
Yeah. And
Wow.
you see that. You
Yeah.
see that today, so wow.
Yeah. So it amazes me that her play goes back to what we talking about, the Four Horsemen, man versus himself.
And it wasn't planned.
And it wasn't planned. That's why I said, Lord, you too good.
It
When I saw
wasn't
that,
planned.
when I saw that this morning, I was like, oh my Lord, I can't believe the Four Freshmen is going to tie into the Four Horsemen story,
That's amazing.
because it still brings
Amazing.
back to what she's talking about: man versus himself, man versus society, and man versus man. Come on, thank you, Sister Diane Cruz. You're not here physically, but in spirit you are, and so is your play. So we're gonna also be giving away, I'm gonna give away 3 free tickets to her show. So if the first 3 people who can text me something about the Four Horsemen and how it can relate back to what she's talking about, man versus himself, man versus society, and man versus man, you will get a free ticket to Sister Diane's Cruz play. And the tickets, like I said, the benefit will be the 23rd, 24th, and the 25th. So we're giving away 3 free tickets. If you can text me how it relates back to what we talked about today, the Four Horsemen, and relate it back, man versus himself, man versus society, man versus man. We will look at that and we will see, give you a call. Be sure to leave your phone number so we can give you a call and say you won that ticket, okay?
And what's the number that they need to call you
The
on?
number they need to call me again. Thank you, daughter, for reminding me. 434-214-0330. Again, 434-214-0330. If you text us that information, how you felt like the Four Horsemen relates back to the Four Freshmen guidelines of what you just said, those 3 things that we talked about. We will look at that and give you a call and let you know who won those free tickets. Again, 434-214-0330. I tell you, Miss Diane, I'm looking forward to that play. I will be there to support you, and I want to thank her for giving me this information. Now, I also asked her, Miss Diane, I asked her, when Diane was asked, what did she want the audience to feel watching the play? She replied, she wanted the audience to reflect on our history and realize that this was just 60 years ago.
Wow.
Not that long ago.
Not long at all.
She wanted the audience to learn the history and recognize that the Jim Crow laws were very real for many black people. And she also stated that she wanted to write the play geared toward the viewpoints of you young people, 19 and 20-year-old men. You know, because it was young men at that time who actually were the ones who were at that counter. They were young men at that time, you know, the Four Freshmen. So it's based on some young men. So that's why she wanted to gear toward the youth, for the youth to know about your history, because the youth were part of that history at that time. So again, the play is September the 23rd, 24th, and 25th, 2022. It's that Friday at 6, that Saturday and Sunday at 4:30 at the TJM Community Centers. Now, you can get the tickets in advance for $10. They're $10 in advance. You can get some from the TJM Community Center, or you can call me and I can let you know where you can get some tickets. But on that day, it will be at the door, will be $15, okay? So guess what? Faith, family, and friends want to see you there. Support Sister Diane Cruz, support the TJM Community Center, and support the L.E. Coleman and the African American Museum Scholarship. Thank you for participating with us.
Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure. We've enjoyed it.
It's been a pleasure. We look forward to more faith, family, and friends.